Hey, everyone, and welcome to Project Zero, where we learn from some of the best project managers in the sport. My name's Alex Tuck, and I'm the host. I'm here with a great friend, founder of Innovation SGP, Brutus. Welcome to the podcast, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much, Alex. I am really excited to be here.
Yeah, cool. Let's jump right into it, right?
Absolutely.
Where did it all start? When did you decide to go into project management, Brutus?
Like a lot of project managers would probably respond to this. I came into project management not through formal training, but through exposure to increasingly complex systems or technical project ecosystems. I would say 2015 and 8, working with different clients on that we are operating different cloud systems, different frameworks. And one of the questions that kept coming up was how do we harness all of these frameworks? How do we put it together? How do we track the deliverables, track things that need to get done? And gradually, I started getting nudged in that direction. But I would say that the turning point for me was in 2018 when I joined the state of Kansas as a project manager. That was the first time that I actually had the title project manager assigned to me. And that was a turning point for me. That would say that marked my that formally marked my entrance into the project management world. Prior to that, a lot of the systems that I've had to work on and work with teams to deliver value. But in 2018, when I took on the full responsibilities of a project manager, that took me into a different world entirely.
That's so cool. That's awesome. And then I forget, did you transition from, I think you were you a software developer at some point, or
Yes,
is
yes.
that like
So
traditional? Yeah.
at some point, yes, I have my bachelor's in political science, which is completely unrelated to engineering or maybe somewhat related to management and value delivery. But my associates was in public administration, so one can say that that connects to project management some way. But of course, throughout college, I picked up engineering or software development skills along the line and would help that polished that the point where I was actually able to get gainfully employed as a developer. And that skill has stayed with me till now. Now I'm more into the technical project management world, and that I got from being exposed to those systems prior to becoming a full-time project manager. But overall background in software development, some engineering piece there, as well as education and political science and administration. All of these tools, all of the things I've been able to learn from these experiences have definitely today adds value to my work as a project manager.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something that's unique. That's something I don't have. I don't have a technical background. I joke that have never gotten paid to write a single line of code, but I've written plenty of code and debugged a bunch of code. But
Yeah.
I don't have that traditional background. I'm curious. I have a lot of colleagues like you, Brutus, who are just terrific project managers,
Mhm.
seen you in action. What do you think going from being an engineer to being a project manager, like what skill do you think that you bring to project management with that experience of engineering?
Mhm.
Is
Uh,
there anything specific? Sorry, I
Absolutely. Absolutely. The world today is moving in a very technical direction, as you can tell with AI and cloud systems and cybersecurity and all of these great spaces. And so I would say having that background helps me add value solutions to projects using technologies. A lot of the times, for example, in my first project ever, right, just by bringing in the right tools, configuring those tools to work for us, PWAB being one of them, the Microsoft project being one of them, leveraging that, and then getting into the SharePoint world, helping create value out of SharePoint for the customer at that time, all of which can be linked back to my knowledge as that I had acquired in the technical space. It does help today. I have seen the way that all of my projects, even the ones that are not technical, I've had to leverage these tools, those technical tools, integrate with different project management tools, for example, to deliver optimal value to the business. So overall, I'd say background in engineering does help a lot. Some soft skills as well, problem solving skills. Project managers today must be problem solvers. And if you're an engineer, you're constantly solving problems. You're trying to debug your code, test your code. or even write code that works. That mindset does help project does help as a project manager because constantly thinking about solutions, thinking about how to arrive at value, solve problems for the business. But of course, that is not the only skills. There's still a lot of skills out there that project managers today, and not to take away from project managers that are not technical, lots of skills that they bring to the table that are very well appreciated and does add value to businesses today.
Love that. Love that. Cool. All right. So now for the fun part, right? You mentioned that
Yeah.
first project, but what was your project zero, right? Like we're talking about that first project where you like figured out like how to be a project manager. Probably failed, probably succeeded, but tell me about that one.
Man, this is a very famous one. Yeah, I was a project manager for a project in Kansas, and the high level scope of the project was to get provide Medicaid providers providing a specific niche of services called home and community based services, which could have different programs for individuals with disabilities, like individuals with developmental disabilities, physical disabilities, and other disabilities. Those programs, some in all states, fall under, they have programs that fall under what we call HCBS services, or home and community based services. So where I wore the hat as a project manager was responsible for getting providers of those services to be compliant with what we call the settings final rule, which is a federal regulation that requires providers to meet certain standards and federal regulations. But most importantly, long and short of those regulations was to ensure that individuals with disabilities are receiving the same, value, the same treatment as individuals without disabilities, because that was a concern. You had providers that are treating individuals with disabilities as though they don't deserve to live like you and I in the society, in the community. Some things we were having issues like isolation and issues like just overall poor treatment of these in compliance with federal rules. And that was when you start looking at a provider may have about 4 or 5 different settings, and each setting might 5, 4, 10, 15 people. And then you roll it up to about 700 or 1,000 providers. Now you're talking about thousands of people that your project directly impacts. That was a project zero for me. I came in it with a lot of experience, but that project just showed me what it takes to manage a project that in public service that touches the lives of people out there. It takes you into the mindset of not just thinking just about the project, but having to wear that empathy hat on, because you're delivering value to individuals out there that need it. So it was a lot, but it was a great learning experience for me. I was able to add value to that project. We picked the project from 0% compliance. We were able to get, I believe before I left, about 76% of our providers in Kansas there to be compliant with federal. Great learning experience, great folks that I worked with. I enjoyed every bit of it.
That's so awesome. I love that work, and I've done some HCBS stuff too, Brutus.
Yes.
So I know the challenges on
Yes.
both sides, on the regulators and the providers side. That's great.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll if you don't earn your skills from that, I don't know what you earn it from.
You're I'm saying you bring every skill that you learn in your PMP to that, right? Your stakeholder engagement, your risk management, your scope management, your budget skills, like everything that I joke and I say the PMP was written for public service because you need it. You throw everything at it.
Oh my goodness, that is so good. That's so interesting. I'm sure there were a lot of these, but do you have one memory in your mind of some big thing that went wrong that you had to correct
Mm.
in some way? Do you remember anything from that project?
Yes, as is the case with a lot of public service projects, a lot of things would go wrong, even just on when you start the project. One of the things that went wrong, I would say, was when I came into the project. Of course, we had technical teams on board, policy teams on board, waiver language SMEs on board as well, program managers on board. Great, great team, lots of skills we brought to the table, but also we did not plan for what happens in the event that one of the areas that we could have planned better was helping plan for providers that refuse, not providers that are unable to meet federal regulations, but providers that refuse to meet federal regulations. Then the question becomes, how do we get the individuals that were served in those settings to providers that are able and are willing to meet federal regulations, right? But sometimes this is a critical lesson that I've learned from since then is assumptions in our project, you have to document those and test those assumptions, right? One of the assumptions we had going in there was, oh, it's federal regulations. A lot of providers, they want to stay in business. They have incentive to want to meet federal regulations. They'll play ball. We'll help them get to that. Every providers, every of our provider, we're willing to come into compliance. And so that assumption was not tested, unfortunately. And we had to find out the hard way, right? Because we found out that some providers were just not willing to come in compliance. They're just fine and they were ready to shut down if that was the case, unfortunately. So good thing is we before the project ended, we quickly found out that that assumption was wrong and engage such providers and plan for transition for participants that are with those providers, but that will need to be transitioned to compliance providers. This was a learning experience for me as a project manager. And so since then, when I go into project management and I hear assumptions, my radar just go up and say, okay, that's an assumption. Let's test it first before we and see the risks that are embedded in that assumption before we move.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a great one. Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine, like, what do people do if they can't get access to their provider
You
anymore?
know, and unfortunately, when you're dealing with a rural area like Kansas, you have in Kansas, not all Kansas is rural, but in Kansas, you have providers that or areas that have maybe one provider or two providers, right? So what happens if that one provider is unable or unwilling to come into compliance with federal regulations? Now you're putting the participants, you're putting them at risk of having to travel miles to find another provider that can provide their services to them. So some lessons were learned from that.
Interesting. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that story. I love that's a great project zero. That's a big one. My my project zero was also a big state project too. It was rolling out
Yes.
Obamacare here in Vermont, and it's the one that I talk about more than anything else. You gotta love state government for giving us these great stories, right?
Yes, yes. I'm sure there are lots of PMs out there with state government experience that even have great stories to tell. Look forward to hearing a lot from them too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So let's jump into this section on experience, like your career growth, right? And
Hmm.
I would love to just hear what's your take. What do you think the number one skill is for project managers? What do they need more than anything, and why?
Oh, that if I would go back, if I would say first for me as a project manager, as simple as this sound, I do believe we can unpack it in many ways. Humility is very important as a project manager. It's a skill that unfortunately some are struggling with, but if you don't, it shows when you don't have it. It quickly gets to everyone sees it from from a far distance when you lack that humility as a PM. And that's a soft skill, of course, that personally has worked for me. An instance is you in the course of your project, you will come across folks that know more than you do because you are a PM, you're not an SME. So many times you get in projects where you're not the subject matter expert. You have to know when to defer to those folks, understanding that they bring unique skill sets and expertise and experience to the table and know how to tap into their skill sets. But all of that starts with humility, being humble enough to work with people, regardless of where they are from, their personalities, their idiosyncrasies, and all that. Just learn to work with them. And then, when you learn to work with them, when you're along the line, you will find a sweet spot, that sweet spot where you get to deliver value, regardless of how tense the relationship with your project team is or how difficult the project is. But if you lack humility, you will run into problems from day one. That's a soft skill that I think every project manager and a lot of project managers that I've met have that. It's something that we recognize in one another from afar. So I would say for me, that is one of the most important skills that I would recommend for project managers.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great one. That's definitely in my top 5 for sure. Thanks for that. All right, another question around project management, right? Like, How do you define success in a project? This is a really contentious question, right? Because everyone's scope, schedule, budget, blah, blah, blah,
Yes.
right? But how do you define success with a project? And has that changed over the course of your career?
Ooh, yes, that has changed. And I would say let me try to frame success in a project through kind of a, at least in my project now, through a systems level lens. So it is not merely the achievement of a predefined scope and schedule and all those cliche things that are critical indicators in some instances of successful projects. Oh, did you deliver on time to budget? And did you deliver the scope? Yes, those are, if you answer those three, yes, sometimes your indicators are green and you're good. But true success, as I've come to find out, is defined when the value is delivered in a way that is sustainable and aligned with with the stakeholder and is resilience. It help it. So I'll give you an example. Build me a car. Fine, I could build you a car, but you may drive the car at 5 miles per hour. It may not go more than 10 miles per hour, and it may break after 6 months. Build me a car that works. These are different scopes. These are, but when I build you a car, I'm thinking, what is the value that this car is supposed to do for you? What do you expect out of this car? To get you from point, what are you trying to, okay, I need to drop my kids off at school in the morning and I need to be able to get there in a very short time without spending too much money on gas. So it's just beyond, it goes beyond just the scope to the value. And this is very difficult to teach. Sometimes it has to come from deep thinking with your team to ask the question of, okay, here's the deliverable, but what is the value of that deliverable? And then when you start dealing to value, your folks get satisfied, your customers get satisfied because their value has been met. And overall, I've heard this saying a lot, the end justifies the means. But I'll tell you that is not always true. I would say more the end for a project manager does not always justify the means. The means to arriving at that value is also very crucial. Some, yes, some want to arrive at value, but they don't mind how many bridges is burnt in the way. Value is not static today. It changes every day. Market conditions change. So if you deliver a working solution today, tomorrow you might have to deliver the next version or iterate upon it. And so if you've burnt your bridge trying to deliver that first MVP, good luck getting your MVP to the next big deal. So the means is also very important. So success for me is working in a way that delivers value to the business or to the sponsor or to the project financier, as well as ensuring that the process for delivering this value is good. It meets not just project management defined principles, but also it satisfies those that are part of that process. You want them to be proud of the project.
Love that. Love that. I love that take on the delivering value and that process. Like the process is just as important as the end result, right? Like I think
Yes.
that's so important. I'm such a like when we go on road trips with my family, I'm like embrace the travel. The travel part is the
Yes.
fun part too, you know.
It's the fun part. Yes. Yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
just about the beach. That's so good. Awesome, Brutus. Thank you. One more thing, like just this is for the listeners that are a little bit earlier in their career. Can you describe like how you're a project management consultant now, right? Like
Mhm.
how did it progress along the way? Like how did you get to the point where you could go out on your own and start consulting?
Absolutely. For me personally, is you I had a lot of experience working different jobs before becoming a formal project manager. But becoming a formal project manager, what it allowed me to do is to then understand how I could project manage different domains that I had experience in prior. After 2018 working with the state, I realized, oh, I have engineering background. I can project manage engineering teams. Now I have the state background, so I can project manage states teams, security, and I did picked up some security skill sets too. So let me see how much I can learn in project managing cybersecurity teams, right? And so over time, I have seen my domain be cybersecurity, healthcare, state government. And that is my niche, and that's what I'm focusing on. If you call me today and say, Brutus, we have a construction, someone is trying to construct the stadium. Can you project manage that? I will be honest with you about my experience. I've never built a stadium, but I know I'm a project manager. I can manage a project. Now, if you want a project manager that has built a stadium, I may not be the right person for you. And so for new project managers, I would say understand what project management entails, but also understand the domain that you want to project manage and be very good at it. Don't stick to a single domain because you come across cross-functional project. Cybersecurity, for example, a project that is maybe enabling a SIEM or SOA or T threat intelligence capability for a healthcare, for a health HMO or for a hospital, right? I have a cybersecurity project management experience. I have healthcare experience. That helps. So there are times where you have to do multiple domains. But for new project managers, I would say get your project management experience, get the skill, get your classes, get the education required. Once you get your entry level job, make sure you understand the domain, have that domain specific knowledge, and build upon that. Be very good at project managing within that domain, and maybe find some additional domains, secondary domains to add to your domain. It's like the engineers; they have their different stack, right? And the new technology comes out, they add a new language to their stack. So as a PM, be curious, understand that you treat this like a stack, and just stack up on your knowledge sets.
Love it. Love those ideas. All right. So now let's go into a speed round, right? So these are just
Yes.
really straightforward. You can stick to the options, right? If you want to, or
Yes.
you can go rogue. You can go for something else. All right. All
Mhm.
right. First, Slack, email, text, or phone call.
Ooh, I would say Slack for asynchronous communication, but phone calls when decisions hinge on nuances. But I would say Slack is very good for that communication with my team. There are times when face-to-face call is just the solution. Get on the call with your sponsor, talk them through it, let them understand it, make sure they are satisfied the conversation.
Love it.
Slack.
Love it. Awesome. All right. Agile or waterfall?
Ooh, this is an interesting one. I wish I don't have to pick one, but I'll say agile for sure. That is the work we are in today, regardless of the organization. Agile is. Whether for, of course,
Awesome.
when there's regulations involved, but agile it is.
Love it. Love it. All right. Speed or perfection?
Ooh, speed for sure. There is a cost to delays. Perfection, yes, there are times for that, but speed for sure. Because of course, you have to when you're dealing in this highly volatile environment, sometimes the difference speed makes the difference many times. And who says we can't do things very well and very fast?
Love it. Love it. All right. This is a contentious one. What's your favorite PM tool?
Ooh, it depends, but yeah, Jira is great because I can do a lot from it and I can pull data from Jira into Confluence. But I'll tell you that yes, Jira is good. I'm not going to throw Microsoft Project Plan under the bus there, but Jira is great.
Oh, wait, I'm gonna give you a chance to do it. All right. What's the worst P
Because good luck trying. And like the discrepancy between the web and stop version is amazingly is just so wide. You can do a little with the web version, but then you can't share with anyone outside of your Office 365 org. So it's just Microsoft has got to do some more work on that tool.
Agreed. Agreed. Awesome. All right. So thank you so much, Brutus. Let's do some final reflection here. You already gave some really good advice about getting domain knowledge, but is there one more piece of advice that you'd give someone early in their project management career? What one piece of advice would you give there?
I would say get closer to the problems you're trying to solve. Don't fall in love with the process for its own sake. Just let the process emerge from empathy, systems thinking, desire to change, not just the outputs, the deliverables, but the value, the outcomes, right? So don't be too hung up on mastering Microsoft project and knowing all the skills you can do on there or Jira, and then you become a process guru, right? Rather focus on the problem, get closer to the problem, understand where to use the skills that you've learned as a project. Your five whys, for example, sometimes you use it and people don't even know that's what you're using, right? And when you get to that point where you can have a conversation, where you're using your tools you've learned without just letting it flow freely to solve problems, I would say then you've grown as a project manager. That would be one advice I would have given to myself back in 2018.
Love it. Love it. All right. This one's a dreamer question here. All right. If you could take one gigantic project, you have unlimited funding, access to the best and brightest minds on the planet, what would you do? What would you fix?
What would I fix? That is a great one. I would say this is somewhat idealistic, but I would say world hunger would be something I would fix because I do believe that there's a lot of real estate, there's a lot of land in the world for mankind to still struggle with food. So I would say if I could have all the resources in the world, the brilliant minds, I think between and among the brilliant minds, there will be solutions on how to get us on the track to fix world hunger.
I love that. Brutus, I'm in. When we fundraise, we're going to fix world hunger together.
Yes, sir.
No small feat. I love it.
Right?
I love it.
And there's a lot of brilliant minds in this world. You have projects, someone is project managing the mission to Mars today, and you have folks that are project managing even larger missions out there. So, yes, we can definitely fix things on our Earth.
Love it. Love it. Cool. Brutus, how can people get in touch with you?
Yes, I am Brutus Segun on LinkedIn. I am on Twitter. You can reach out to me on those means, and you can message me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. I'm active on those platforms.
Awesome. We'll put that in the description to the links to both of those. And Brutus, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And thanks to all of you who listened to our first interview on Project Zero. Be sure to subscribe to Project Zero wherever you get your podcasts. And everyone have a great week. See you later.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you.